have more of a tough question, as I know so many people who are going through this transit, similar age. The Saturn Neptune transit to natal Chiron, late Pisces, early Aries, is such a challenge for many right now. What is the tie-in to such a time we are living in? How do we counsel those who are navigating this transit among what else is happening in the world? And do these folks have the same challenges as others who are being their own hero? Is combating the challenges of Chiron the way they are a hero, or do they have to work with Chiron and have to find their own way to be a hero on top of the Saturn Neptune transit to Chiron? Question mark. Additionally, those who are Aries, born at the right time, are experiencing Chiron conjuncting their sun on top of it. As learning astrologers, how do we be supportive, honest, and not break boundaries when counseling these configurations? What is the most helpful message for them?
Yeah. One is correct in calling this a tough question,
Mm.
simply because there's so many moving parts. We have the transiting Saturn and Neptune dancing back and forth between Aries and Pisces, which makes them very, very different. And then Chiron in Pisces is a different beast than Chiron in Aries. So there's lots and lots of wild cards and shifting variables as we attempt to understand this. I'll dive in. I do want to begin by saying that the context of the larger logic of a person's chart will enormously flavor their response to Chiron. Really, every planet in the chart draws its meaning from the larger context. And so these are like very personal situations, but I'm working with just a tiny little bit of information in terms of specific individuals. So again, if you have Chiron in Pisces or Aries, and you're listening to this, your mileage may vary, depending on the larger logic of your chart. Now, perspective. Chiron entered Pisces in 1960. It crossed into Aries in 1968, stayed there till 1977. It's of course more recently been in Pisces in 2018. It entered currently in Aries. So we have some people in the second half of life, and we have some kids, who would both kind of fit this picture. Broad principle in interpreting any transit, way I would encourage us to enter it, is start with an understanding of the natal structure that is being triggered. So we'll put the Saturn and the Neptune aside for a moment by transit, and think about the nature of Chiron in Pisces or Chiron in Aries. They're really different beasts, and they're both recently undergoing a lot of development, but different structures. So Chiron, the wounded healer, as we respond well to Chiron and deal with our wound, this can trigger the potential of us healing others with a similar wound. But it really starts with the wound. And so we'll focus there. And here, a very general idea about the nature of a wound symbolized by Chiron in Pisces. And if we think suspiciously of Pisces, we think of the shadow side, the vulnerabilities of Pisces, and what happens if those vulnerabilities get triggered. This is how we start. And Pisces again, this is not the best of Pisces. This is more the problematic wound side of Pisces. It can give up. It can sort of drift through life. It's I think of we give stern advice to a teenager, and the teenager rolls their eyes and they say whatever. It's just whatever, that I give up, you know, that's a darker side of Pisces. And if souls have experienced defeat or terrible loss or situations of impossibility or damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations, this can manifest as a chironic Piscean wound. If we think of Chiron in Aries, it's an entirely different energy. Aries basically doesn't give up. Aries is fierce and fiery and conveys courage positively, but also anger and resentment and its darker side. And so the wound and the soul of rage, for example, the wound of virulent hatred. These are dark kind of Aries Chiron themes, difficult to deal with, and so totally different from Pisces, the wound of giving up or the wound of endless rage and attack, entirely different creatures. Okay, those are natal structures. Again, Wanda was right. Tough question. So we've got a couple of kind of grounds to stand on here. And then we think of the Saturn and the Neptune together. We can talk about it for months if we want to, but very simply, Neptune is spiritual, Saturn is discipline, spiritual discipline. This is the positive response to the Saturn-Neptune energy, where let's say you routinely meditate. That's a good habit to have. And you one day you sit down to meditate and then you finish. And under the Saturn Neptune energies, we might say, how do you know you're finished? You know, why don't you sit back down and see what happens if you meditate when you don't want to, when you're tired of it? Saturn, that gives you the ability potentially to do what you don't feel like doing. That's always the nature of Saturn. I introduced Saturn to a client. I said, when was the last time you felt like going to the dentist? When was the last time you felt like cleaning your house? These are not things we feel like doing, but we need to do them. That's Saturn. And so linking it to Neptune, the sense of the hard work with the spiritual goal again, I feel like I could fill up the rest of our time together with Wanda's question. So let me sort of wrap it up by saying that we make a committed spiritual effort to deal with our chironic wound, as I've just described it. That's really the essence of this. Now you can put Chiron in a house and you can look at the nodal story and really counsel an individual. But there's the basic structure. It's time to take that wound seriously. It's time to address it. It's time to release your attachment to it. This will take a tremendous amount of effort. And if you succeed in that, you become the wounded healer. You empower yourself to help others who have a similar kind of wound themselves. So that's the most justice I can do to this question within reasonable time limits. I hope that's been helpful.